Hi, everyone. My name is Lukas Pietrzak. I am a recent graduate of Georgetown University's School of Public Policy, and I live in Washington, D.C. with my dog, Kobe. And I currently work in broadband policy with Next Century Cities. I attended the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. And during my tenure there, I took a course on media policy and law, and actually had a professor who some people listening to this might recognize, Dr. Christopher Ali, who is sort of a academic all-star, I'd like to say, in the broadband world. And he had a unit in our course about precision agriculture, which was the first time I had ever heard about sort of broadband policy in this great world that I live in now. And I sat through this two lecture sort of topic about precision agriculture. And I went to him afterward and I said, I would love to learn more about this. And so through the rest of that semester, he sort of gave me tidbits of what sort of the broadband industry and policy was like. And then I was able to take two more courses with him at UVA and eventually write a capstone with him as my advisor that sort of opened my eyes even more broadly and culminated in me doing some research about Albemarle County, which is the county that surrounds Charlottesville, Virginia. And that was my first taste of this is what broadband looks like in the real world. And I developed a list of recommendations for their county board of commissioners. And from there, I like to say the rest was just a fairy tale that I now eat, sleep, breathe, do academia, and work in broadband policy. I think what drew me to it at the beginning and sort of what made me fall in love with it initially was when I first started learning about this topic back in like 2018, 2019, it was still niche and very sort of not exclusive, but it was talked about in Congress, it was talked about in politics, but I often tell people it wasn't one of the sexy issues that aired in prime time on network news or got a full hour on CNN. It was something that sort of happened in these select meetings or among academics or professionals, and it seemed new. And so it was something different. And when I got to graduate school, everyone was interested in healthcare policy or immigration policy or foreign policy, which are very important topics. But I was one of the few people who said, in undergrad, I learned about broadband infrastructure and want to keep doing that. And it was something special that the community was small enough in DC that I could sort of get in on the ground floor, but also wasn't too far removed from the people at the top. And, you were able to talk to the leaders who would actually listen to you. It wasn't this policy machine of thousands of people across the country. It was sort of a very tight-knit community. The thing that I would say the last year or the last few years that we've gotten right is we've really expanded this conversation beyond putting the cables in the ground, which is obviously one of the most important first steps. But I think that COVID really underscored the human impact of what we were doing. I know a lot of times in Washington, D.C., I've learned this since moving here, is you can get very caught up in the data and the numbers, which are important, but you can very much disassociate from the consequences of our actions if you simply say, oh, we went from 7% lacking access to this speed to now only 4% of people. You forget that the 3% could be thousands of families, people trying to get online. And I think something that the policy community in DC and in cities and towns and states across the country has really done well is they've elevated individuals. They've made it human-centered. And sort of COVID forced us to do that because we were seeing these images of kids doing school from home for the first time ever. And I know my mom is a fourth grade teacher, and she had students that I saw personally struggling to get online. And I think that's something we've done really well is we've made it about people. The infrastructure matters, the numbers matter, but at the end of the day, this is a person trying to live their life online and struggling to do so. I think I would tell them to make it matter for themselves, for the people around them, for their network. Because something that I've noticed, attending conferences virtually, returning to conferences in person, and conversations I've had, frankly, with other, colleagues at other organizations who are around my age and my sort of level of path in our career, is we have this problem where we don't have a lot of young people coming into our policy circles. And I know that there are great people who have worked on this issue for decades, and they have done amazing work and continue to do amazing work. But to people considering coming into broadband, it can be terrifying. It is a field that requires sort of technical knowledge beyond maybe other policy fields. And it's a field that, I mentioned the tight-knit community earlier, and it's fantastic once you're welcomed in. But I know that I still sit in meetings and have sat in meetings my entire, professional time, that I may think I have a great idea, but may not feel empowered to share it. And I think when we, as, new entrants to this industry, make it matter to ourselves, it gives us that boost to share the personal story or share the experience, of a community. But when you make it matter, you suddenly become an expert, because we may have people who have done this for 20, 30, 40 years, but I can be an expert on a new thought that has never been brought to that table before. And it can be daunting and it can be terrifying, but I would encourage someone to just speak up. If you think it matters to you and you have something new to share, do it, because if we don't sort of act soon, we're going to have this issue. And I think it was mentioned at a conference we were at recently. We're going to have this issue where all of these people who have been working for decades are going to retire, and we're going to be left without sort of the new generation to take it on. So I would encourage people to see why broadband matters to them, to speak up in meetings about why, and not be afraid to take up space with new ideas. My largest surprise when I came into the broadband industry was just how many different topics it touches. I made a comment, I think in my capstone in undergrad, that it is the furthest reaching but least talked about policy issue in the United States. And obviously that has changed since 2019 because we're talking about it every day now. But I was just shocked by the way that you could bring broadband into almost every conversation you were having, whether it was about food insecurity or education or housing or immigration or healthcare. That I told my friends in college, I said, give me a topic that you're talking about and I will tell you why it matters there. And I think that's something that we don't necessarily utilize or exploit enough when we're having conversations, that we could show up in any meeting, at any conference, on any panel, anywhere, and make ourselves relevant. I would say it's to go to space. I don't know with what capacity, but I always tell people, if I could go back and do life again and somehow could be better at math, I would have become an astrophysicist or an astronaut in some capacity. I could never do it because I have hated math since high school. Not hated, I have had a love-hate relationship with math since high school. But I'm excited to see that space travel is becoming more abundant, and I would love to one day be able to say I did it. I don't know if it would be if they need policy professionals when we go to Mars. I don't think they will, but you never know. I could be on that first ship to Mars to help them write telecom regulations as we lay fiber on Mars, but only if we've closed the divide on Earth first. That's my stipulation.